We use banks pretty much every single day, right? But have you ever really stopped to think about what's going on behind the curtain? It's a system that's way more complex and honestly way more fascinating than most of us realize. So let's dive in and really pull back that curtain on how banking actually works. We all get the basic idea of saving money. We picture a piggy bank or maybe some cash tucked away under the mattress for a rainy day. It's safe, it's simple, and it just sits there. But here's the thing. When you put your money in a bank, it doesn't just sit there. Oh no, it goes on a pretty wild journey. And that's where our story really begins. So, that's the big question, isn't it? What really happens the moment you make a deposit? It's not like it just gets stored in some giant vault with your name on it. Your money becomes a tiny but crucial part of a massive dynamic system that literally powers our entire economy. So come on, let's follow the money. Right, so your money doesn't just hang out when it's in the bank. It gets a job, a very important job, actually. It becomes a key part of the engine that makes our economy go. Let's take a look at how that works. At its very heart, you can think of a bank as a kind of financial matchmaker. Seriously, it takes people who have some extra money, savers like you and me, and connects them with people who need money, maybe to buy a house or start a business. It sounds simple, but it's an incredibly powerful idea that affects all of our lives. Okay, but if banks are just moving money around, how do they make a profit? It's a great question, and the answer is in their business model, which is clever, surprisingly simple, and lets them literally make money from money. The whole secret to how a bank makes money is this thing called the interest rate spread. It's a simple but totally brilliant idea. They pay you a small amount of interest to keep your money with them, and then they turn around and charge someone else a lot more interest to borrow it. That difference, that gap, that's their profit. So let's just walk through it. You deposit your savings, the bank might pay you, say, 1% interest on that. But then it lends that money out to a student at 6%. That 5% difference multiplied across thousands and thousands of loans and customers, well, that becomes a massive engine for revenue. But believe it or not, that's not even their biggest secret. Now, if you think that's the whole story, you're going to want to stick around, because we're about to get into the most fascinating, most counterintuitive part of banking, how the system doesn't just move money around, it actually helps create it. To really get this, we have to go way back in time, to the 1600s and these goldsmiths. People would store their gold with them for safekeeping and get a paper receipt. But the goldsmiths noticed something really interesting. On any given day, only a few people actually came in to get their physical gold. So they had this light bulb moment. Hey, why don't we lend out some of this gold that's just sitting here? And that was the spark. That's how modern finance was born. And that system is called fractional reserve banking. The name tells you everything you need to know. Banks are only required to keep a fraction of your deposit in reserve. The rest of it, they lend it out. And let's see how that seemingly simple act literally creates new money. Okay, let's use some simple numbers. Let's say you deposit $100 in the bank. Now, you might think that $100 is just sitting there in a vault with your name on it, but that's not what happens at all. The bank is only required to keep a small fraction of it on hand, maybe $10. The rest gets put to work. So, what happens to that other $90? Well, the bank lends it out, maybe to Sarah, who wants to buy a bike. And this, right here, is where the real magic of banking starts. And here's where it gets a little mind-bending. When Sarah buys her bike, the shop owner takes that $90 and deposits it into his bank account. Now that bank sees a new deposit, keeps its fraction, $9, and lends out the other $81. This creates a chain reaction. Every new loan becomes a new deposit, which then fuels yet another new loan. So here's the crazy part. Your original $100 is still sitting in your account. You can see it on your bank statement. But at the same time, it has kicked off this ripple effect of new loans, and therefore new money all throughout the economy. The banking system, just by making loans, has literally expanded the money supply. It's almost like creating money out of thin air. Look, I know it sounds too strange to be true, but it is. Don't just take my word for it. Adair Turner, a former top financial regulator, put it perfectly. He said banks create money ex nihilo, a Latin phrase that literally means out of nothing. When a bank issues a loan, it's creating a brand new deposit. It's a powerful and pretty wild feature of our financial system. Now, of course, a system this powerful can't just be a free-for-all. It needs rules. It needs referees to keep it all stable. So who are the key players that are managing and regulating this whole thing?
So first up, you've basically got two main types of banks. There are retail banks, that's your local branch on Main Street dealing with checking accounts and mortgages for regular people. And then you have investment banks, the big giants on Wall Street dealing with huge corporations and high finance. They're two sides of the same coin, but they play by very different rules.
At the very top of this whole pyramid, you have the central bank, like the Federal Reserve here in the US. It's the ultimate financial authority. It's the banker's bank. And most importantly, it acts as the lender of last resort. That means if a regular bank is about to fail, the central bank can step in with emergency cash to prevent a panic that could take down the entire system. And you have to remember, banking today is a global network. It's all so interconnected. That's why you have these global watchdogs, like the Bank for International Settlements. They help write the international rulebook to make sure banks all over the world have enough of their own money at stake, enough skin in the game to stop them from taking reckless risks that could threaten everybody. So, after all of that, why does this complex system of spreads and reserves and regulators matter so much? Well, because, for better or for worse, it is the engine of our modern economy. The banking system is really a double-edged sword. It's this incredibly powerful engine for progress. It funds new businesses, homes, and ideas that create growth. But it's also inherently fragile. That same mechanism that allows banks to create money also makes them vulnerable to a crisis of confidence, like a classic bank run. And that really brings us to the final, most crucial point. This whole intricate structure we've explored, from interest spreads all the way to money creation, it isn't ultimately built on gold or cash in a vault. It's built on a single, invisible foundation: confidence. Confidence that your money is safe, and confidence that the system will work tomorrow just like it did today. And that leaves us with one last question to think about. What happens when that confidence is lost?